Now we do have our BMP-3s on station. As I said, machine guns, anti-tank guided missiles, a 30mm autocannon, and a 100mm cannon make these into pretty deadly opponents for a lot of different units. Now they aren't very well armored, and I guess you could say that modern events have maybe shown these aren't as effective as I like to think they are. In WARNO, they are pretty good. Alright, howdy folks, welcome back to more WARNO. It's been a couple of days since I last made a video on this, but I actually just saw some news that they are working on getting their next update out, which will have both a East German and West German faction coming soon. So I figured it would be a good time to finally showcase this replay from a couple of days ago, where I played around with a bunch of the Soviet BMP-3s that are in the later added Soviet division. There's currently 2 Soviet and 2 American divisions in WARNO, and they just added, well, I say just, they added the infantry-focused divisions later on. I did actually use the BMP-3s, which are just absolutely equipped to the brim with weapons, ATGMs, an autocannon, a 100mm gun, machine guns. We're going to be seeing those later. But today we're just playing a little 4v4 on the chemical map. 3 AI on my team, 4 AI on the enemy team. I did a video basically very much like this in Steel Division, where I took a look at their new Italian DLC, and it was so well received because I think WARNO and Wargame and Steel Division, these games look so fantastic. It's just that you never get the opportunity to experience these games on this scale or this level, because you're always busy with the macro view of everything. If you want to, you can definitely play the game at this level, but you're going to get, oh, that was a very close missile strike. You're going to get absolutely destroyed. The games really do have, I think, honestly, some of the better looking graphics for an RTS game, and it's just a shame that you don't get to see it as often. Hence, what was that? What was that ATG? What the hell are those ATGM shots? This is an AI BMP-1 that I'm following. What is even happening? That might have been, okay, that might have been a bug. I'm not sure, that was hilarious. So as I was saying, these games look so absolutely good. You just never get the opportunity to really enjoy it. And that's where I think these replays really kind of shine, because you do get the chance to take a look at every angle, every perspective of these battles. For example, this Apache getting absolutely obliterated and losing its tail, thus causing it to crash. Stuff like that that you probably wouldn't have caught in such detail if you're just playing it regularly. So as I mentioned, WARNO is going to be releasing a bunch of new factions and divisions. Unlike Wargame, where you would pick the US and then, for example, pick Armored or Airborne, or you'd pick the Soviets and pick Marines, WARNO follows the sort of steps of Steel Division 2, where you pick a division, hence why you don't pick a specialization anymore. So when I say new factions, I guess I also mean new divisions. So like I said, the next one will have a West and East German armor unit. So I guess we're expecting Leopards, Leopard 1s and Leopard 2s, some East German T-55s, T-72s. To my surprise, I learned the East Germans only had like 25 BMP-2s, by the way, so I don't know if we'll see many of those on the East German side of things. And then in a future update, they're going to have a mechanized West German and East German division, so probably that's where we'll maybe see the BMP-2s, but also the West German Martyrs. So if I'm being honest, the Martyr 1 and Martyr 2 I think are going to be awesome additions. Those were some of my favorite mechanized units. They just look very futuristic, and it's very exciting to me personally they are coming to WARNO. Then they have announced 3 more future add-ons going all the way until May of this year. At least these are things they are confirming. I'm assuming they just don't want to confirm too much too far ahead. And the next 2 are going to be both a NATO and a Warsaw Pact airborne unit, which I'm not really 100% sure what that's going to entail. They did mention a long time ago on their Discord that they were looking into how to get paradropped airborne units, like from a plane, to work in WARNO, and I'm hoping that we might see something about that in this next update. They're also going to be adding new maps and towed weapons in a future update. Think of ZU-23 AA guns or artillery piece, which could be very interesting. Then we have 2 infantry divisions, again both a NATO and Warsaw Pact coming in April as well, which I think May being my most one I'm looking forward to, with a French and British division as well as new maps. And obviously the French and the British divisions will both be on the NATO side of things, though it wouldn't surprise me if we'll see an update in the maybe further future with countries such as Poland or Czechoslovakia, countries that were in Wargame, Red Dragon, and may show up in WARNO at some point. We have a very stealthy Soviet tank right here who is trying to get eyes on some Pattons who are pushing through the forest. It's going to be hard to see, but they are just through the tree line. I think one of their support Humvees was actually knocked out by my friendly Biryusha anti-aircraft gun, though the Biryusha itself just got knocked out by one of those pushing Pattons. I just want to come back real quick on the subject of future updates. I know that right now there isn't really much for the more casual or skirmish-loving players like myself in WARNO. Really, there's only been a couple maps, and you can only really fight against the AI. Those MI8s are not feeling so hot anymore, by the way. And after you've done that, 5-6 times, you're basically kind of SOL. Now, they haven't talked at all about any single-player content like their Army General campaigns or some of those scripted missions they talked about, other than, yes, they will be coming at some point. So secretly, I'm hoping we see them sooner rather than later, but they haven't mentioned them at all the way, obviously, going into May, so I don't think you should hold your breath for those to be released anytime soon. Now, we do have our BMP-3s on station. As I said, machine guns, anti-tank guided missiles, a 30mm autocannon, and a 100mm cannon make these into pretty deadly opponents for a lot of different units. Now, they aren't very well armored, and I guess you could say that, modern events have maybe shown that these aren't as effective as I'd like to think they are. In WARNO, they are pretty good, and they are currently only to be found in the Guards Infantry Division. I wasn't really sure what to expect from these guys, but loaded with infantry, I had 4 of them roll up, so basically a platoon of BMP-3s and a platoon of the infantry, and I was able to get a foothold on the middle island, just abusing their insane firepower. So currently these BMP-3s are actually in a standoff with an M1 Abrams. Let's be real, the M1 Abrams is going to make pretty short work of even multiple BMP-3s. The Abrams in WARNO is actually surprisingly easily destroyable. I have seen ATGMs make relatively short work of Abrams, even the higher tiered ones. But this time my BMP-3s had to retreat, use some of the buildings as cover, and I was actually trying, and successfully as you can see, trying to attempt to lure the enemy armor a little closer, though my infantry was getting pinned down, and none of them were actually equipped with ATGMs, so it was really coming down to the BMP-3's ATGMs, and they were not winning a direct standoff fight with an Abrams. At this point in time in the game, my team had 50 points. The enemy team had 1,500 points. I knew I needed to get some stuff done, so I figured I would heavily reinforce these bridges, make sure that no enemy units could cross them, and then start really focusing on where I sent my BMP-3s and lock down the middle island, considering that's like where 4 of the map's capture points are. One thing that I know the Eugen devs have talked about is amphibious capabilities. Obviously, the Warsaw Pact was very famous for making almost all, if not all, of their IFVs and APCs amphibious, and at the moment, I don't think amphibious capabilities are in the game. though I have seen posts and news. It looked like they are looking to make amphibious units a thing. I do think that it would change maps, like the chemical map, a lot, because currently there's only a couple of bridges, and whenever you lock these down, there's just no way across them. Now I know that the concept or the subject of Navy has been a highly contested thing in Wargame or Dragon. I personally never enjoyed playing... Oh, there goes a plane down. I never really enjoyed playing with ships or Navy in actual PvP games. I think they were more of an afterthought for the campaign, though there was some interesting moments. Obviously, WARNO, they're not going to be adding any ships. If anything, there'll be small river craft, and I really don't see them adding those. They've said we're not doing it. Again, the ships, I understand. It would just be really cool, again, to have amphibious landings. I'm hoping that there's a scripted mission where you do like a rush across the Rhine. You unload a bunch of BMPs and try to get across the river in some sort of Soviet-style armored push with smoke and artillery. It is currently still something I miss in the game, and that really makes me wish that we had a little bit more aspects of Red Dragon in WARNO than we do stuff from Steel Division. In his upcoming patch, besides an East and a West German unit, one thing that I personally really like is the fact they are decreasing the rate of fire for mortars. They're adding 3 new maps, which I guess I totally forgot to mention. Currently there are only 4 maps in the game, with technically a 5th map being a 5... Is there 4 or 3? I think there's 4 maps, with a 5th map being a 10v10, which is only really playable on the servers Eugen provides. This also bridge looks really cool. There's a bunch of wrecks. We see BMPs, we see Abrams, we see, I think that's a recon BMP. There's a BMP-2 following this T-64. The game just looks so good. But yeah, they're also, like I said, adding 3 new maps. I'm hoping we'll see maybe some, some single player content, not just skirmish, but I know that they definitely would mention it if they were going to be adding anything. As the enemy points have almost neared 1800, where they only need about 2,000 points to win, I'm sending in a platoon of motostrelki in these trucks, almost on a suicide mission. I knew I needed infantry to get into the middle. The chemical map has a huge amount of buildings and just structural cover in the middle, so we needed infantry to get in there, get up front, basically throw themselves as a meat shield at the enemy. As you can see, this middle thing has a lot of going for it. We need guys in there, clear it out, spot stuff for our armor to make it up ahead, and it's actually, this could be a cinematic of its own. I should probably just sit here the entire battle and get like a cinematic from just the stuff happening with rockets, RPGs, missiles going out. They deployed the infantry. As you can see, they're already going for American-held building on the right side. Our motostrelki are advancing in the middle. We actually spotted some enemy artillery and anti-air here. Now, one thing I've been really enjoying using, but it's really hard to get into the replay, are the Su-24 cluster bombers. Now, they are actually very fast, and they make a very short and very, one-time run. So it's hard to get them in this replay, but you gotta believe me when I say they are very effective. But even though their speed, they do seem to get intercepted relatively easily by enemy anti-air. So getting this motostrelki out there up front, making sure they destroy enemy anti-air is definitely a good pastime for them. They actually have a helicopter flying basically straight overhead, as it's what the hell is even happening right now? We're getting Cobra'd, but the Cobra is definitely not going to live very long as it's getting shot at by... And no, there it goes. Surprised it took this many motostrelki shooting at it and it still survived. It did look very cool. It looked like it almost dropped a napalm bomb right below on the motostrelki there. Actually, it did go down. It did go down in the background there. It's a shame it didn't follow it on the way back. But it's cool to see the scale of this battle, because there's a little squad of infantry in a forest, and that's just a very tiny bit of this map. And we're not even looking at this where I spawned, or this entire peninsula over here, which again really showcases the insane scale of WARNO. I have found helicopters to be a little weaker than I think they were in Red Dragon. Helicopter spam is actually no longer really a thing, or helicopter CV spam, where you send a huge amount of helicopters at the enemy starting location. No longer really effective, because they actually now made it impossible for you to CV snipe where you destroy the enemy command vehicle in home bases, because there is no longer a requirement for you to actually have a CV in your home base. So you don't have to worry about moving it around or getting an enemy artillery unit to just get a lucky hit, because that would actually ruin games where people would randomly guess where your command vehicle was, and that is now removed. I feel like that's actually a really good change, and I wish that they would patch that into Red Dragon, because I feel like it would make matches with your friends, although you can talk about, hey, don't CV snipe, a little less frustrating. Another platoon of BMP-3s with Moto Strelki are on their way to the middle. We actually managed to stop the enemy from getting points, but we didn't manage to get the upper hand and actually capture enough zones for us to start gaining points. So I figured I had like 24 or 30, close to 30 BMP-3s and Moto Strelki inside available. There's a crashed jet right there. And I figured I might as well try and throw as many of these into the middle at this point to at least try to, use my basically top tier unit, mostly relying on the BMP-3, not so much the Moto Strelki inside. And I think that these guys actually allowed us to basically win the battle. Spoiler, I managed to capture an elusive Su-24 cluster bomb run. As you can see, the cluster bombs are going in the background there, and I know that they nerfed them and don't use against infantry, which is fine because it does make them very strong otherwise. They still actually cause them to get panicked. Our BMP-3s have dismounted their Moto Strelki, and though they are a little bit behind the BMP-3s, I figured we could get them into a position, hold down a more open area, and then have the Moto Strelki push up to them. However, these BMP-3s were rushing around so hard, it was actually impossible to keep the infantry up with the BMP-3s. The Su-25, or the Frogfoot, a little bit less elusive than the Su-24 in this. This is obviously not mine, it's actually controlled by an AI, so there's a little bit of a, ooh, that was a nice target actually there, nice hit. A little bit more of a, random to its movement, randomization to its movement, but it is like that. But it is cool to see these jets up close. They go so fast, especially some of these cluster bombers, and you just can't really keep up with them, especially not in the game. We do see a heavy rocket barrage coming out there in the background. It looks very freaking cool. That actually concludes our video for today. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this look at a WARNO replay, and I'll catch you in the next one.